Thank you, dear heart, and welcome everybody. Delighted that you're with us today. And what were you saying about the chat room, honey?
There's a question, but Dr. Tim may have answered it. It says, so are there no morals, no right or wrong, just love or not love? What about the love of money, making money through others' addictions?
Well, you know, the words of that question for me are so loaded that I think any answer that would be given, remember one of the things we talked about is that our listening, what's in brain cells, is what composes our listening. And it also comprises our speaking. And so rather than trying to answer in terms of those loaded words and offer some thoughts in terms of those loaded words, I would put into a different realm. If we look from the point of view of the physicist, you'll note that it describes the motive force of the universe with a different word than theology does. It calls it energy. Psychology, psychiatry calls it the collective unconscious. Theologically oriented people call it God. If you get past, Winston Churchill said we have the privilege of being separated by a common language. If you get past the words that are used, there's really only one thing in the universe to talk about, and that is, and I'll put it in terms of what we're working with the Gospel of Thomas. I'll put it in those terms, a la Yeshua in his statements there. And that is that we are, one of the statements from Thomas we're going to cover today is, if we get that far, is that we are, if we're asked who we are, to answer, we are light, which would be another word, another concept. But if we look from the point of view, if we take the brain cells that most of us have around the idea of physics and recognize that everything is energy, and then tie it together with the insight we offered yesterday that life is love flowing through a cell, then I think we'd be perhaps safer to put this in terms of what energetic patterns support life and what energetic patterns destroy life. We all start out in exactly the same place. We all start out at conception and then through taking that first breath of life as the active presence of love or light. And my offering would be anything that enhances that presence of light and love would be what we would call right action. And anything that distorts, destroys, or weakens the presence of love flowing through a cell. Again, remembering Yeshua says he's got one purpose, singular. He doesn't talk about dogma or doctrine. He says, I come to bring you life. And as I said yesterday, my best definition of what life is it's love flowing through a cell. So anything that inhibits the love flowing through your cellular structure or the cellular structure of another, don't do it. That's all. And, if whether it's addictions, whatever arena you want to go into, if you want to maintain your human life, then my offering would be that you set your standard as what inhibits the flow of love through your cellular structure. And if there are things you engage in that do that, then you forgive us to those things to remove them. And then you engage in the things that enhance the flow of love through your cellular structure. So that would be my offering. And if there are any other thoughts, type them in or call the show. The call-in number is 563-999-3581, and let's have a conversation about it. If there's some, if that addressed what your question was in the chat room, even if Tim did, maybe there's a shade different thought here. Great. But if there are other refinements, the conversation always enhances if we can do a two-way conversation. So if you call a number and push one, let's have a talk about it. And or if you're out there in listener land and you need support in any of the tools or any of the work that we're doing together, push 1 and ask your question. If you've been engaging in your work and questions arise, the very purpose of this show is to be here to support and offer information about the tools for gaining your liberty from everything of this world. You know, down through the ages, men have done their damnedest to bind others to their insanity. And I think the reason for that is because they have not yet experienced their own liberty. Once you've experienced your liberty, not freedom, I'm not using the word freedom, there is no freedom. We hear people all the time, I want my freedom, my freedom, my freedom. I want to be able to do whatever I want to do and not have to experience any consequences or results of it. Well, that would be freedom, but that's the impossible dream. It does not exist. Yes, you have liberty, do whatever you choose, but you do not have the freedom to determine what the result's going to be on an energetic level. And so, perfect liberty. And this work is about recognizing that the profound teacher for you in regard to your eternal human life is inside of you. You remember Yeshua said, you can deny me, but don't deny the one I came to connect you with. This work is about connecting you with the guidance in you, about supporting you removing all of the blocks to the awareness of love's presence and experiencing your full complement of the presence of love flowing through your cellular structure and providing you with the tools to enhance that to its max. So that would be my offering in regard to that question in the chat room. Any other thoughts there, Jeannie?
No, you covered it very well, and I'm just typing into the chat room. Hope that answered his questions, and did he have any other questions? But I haven't heard back yet.
Well, do we have anybody else out there in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room? Anything we can do to support you before we get into the next saying from the Gospel of Thomas?
No hands up.
Well, then let's go for it.
Okay.
So we finished with statement number 47, which really focused on this idea of a house divided against itself. That, he says you can't ride 2 horses, you can't draw 2 bows, you can't serve 2 masters. You're going to honor one and insult the other. And then this next statement, number 48, really points to the fact that the internal divisions, it's like we all come into the world the same way, as the active presence of love. And we have a culture that has a million ways of destroying that awareness and taking us into some form of hostility or fear. There's a really powerful invention that came along, about 80 or so years ago, that brought the brainwash right into people's living rooms. And you'll note the brainwash is based primarily in hostility and fear. Interesting exercise to do. Sit down in front of your TV with a notebook, piece of paper, draw a margin on the left-hand side of the page 1 inch wide, or if the margin's already there, just use that margin. And then leave the rest of the page blank. Sit in front of the TV set and turn to a channel, any channel, doesn't matter. If you've got cable, you may have 1,000 different channels. Spend no more than 3 minutes on any particular station and just flip from one to another, to another, to another, to another, to another. Spend an hour or two. And as you do that, wherever you hear a word being used that truly represents human life as the active presence of love, put a check mark in the 1 inch column on the left-hand side. Every time you hear a word based in hostility or fear, put a check mark on the right-hand side of the page. You will fill pages and pages and pages with check marks on the right-hand side of the page before you get one single 1-inch column filled in, based in love. That's how powerfully the world has practiced destroying the awareness of who we are, knocking that out of us, and then inviting us to function out of its hostility and fear. And offering that, of course, the only option you could have is you have to punish them. You have to be angry. You have to protect yourself. You have to defend. You have to fight. And unfortunately, that's becoming, in some circles especially, more and more true. And the reason it's becoming true is not because it is true, would be my offering. The reason it's becoming true is we are creators, and these ideas have taken over our creative process, and we are creating that result. That's what was symbolized by Yeshua's last parable of 2 bows, 2 horses, 2 masters, 2 wines, 2 minds. The internal division must be healed. Remember, he said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. You can't function as love and permit any form of hostility or fear to move in you. Well, does that mean I have to hide it all, Michael, and suppress it? No, absolutely not. If it's there, own it, acknowledge it, stop blaming others for it, do the work of forgiveness. That's the core tool of this work, is that of forgiveness. Remove those states of mind from yourself so that the internal division, you are no longer a house divided against yourself, but you function as the active presence of love. And that's what's addressed in this next statement. Number 48, he says, if 2 make peace with one another in this one house, they shall say to the mountain, be moved, and it shall be moved. Now, most people would look at that one and go, if 2 make peace with one another in this one house, what the heck? Well, what do you suppose the house is? It's your own temple, your own body-mind unit. That's your house. And you'll note in 47, he points up the division, the conflict, the hostility, fear-based mind versus a love-based mind. And one must make peace within. Mind of man, that's referred to in saying 47, and the new mind of Christ. So we've got carbon-based memory that we've talked about, and it's got all of these generational patterns and such. And then there's the mind, literally the mind you are designed to function from, which was called the mind of Christ. By the way, Christ simply means, in Aramaic, means the anointed one who's awakened. It is not the name of a man. It is the name of an office. You know, if I ran for mayor and won the role, you would call me Mayor Michael, but it doesn't mean my name is mayor. It's an office that I hold. Christ in Aramaic is an office. It literally means the buttered one. They anointed those who had awakened to their true nature with oils, holy oils. And it's our birthright, you and I and every one of us, to come into harmony with the operation of both minds being under the control of the active presence of love, referred to in this statement as peace, if 2 make peace. It's interesting in the Aramaic where they talk about Yeshua, I come, my peace I leave to you, my peace I give to you. In Aramaic, the word is serenity. It's not peace. So if the 2 parts, the divided parts, the hostility and fear-based self and the true love-based self, come into serenity with each other in this temple, then their true creative conscious power is restored. That was the definition of what was called the Promised Land. You remember this group of people who got supposedly were lost in this hot, sandy place for 40 years, 75 square mile area, for 40 years. Do you think that they were so dumb that they couldn't have moved out? Or I think the Sinai Desert is about 35 square miles. You think they didn't know how to follow the sun to get out of the desert? No, the desert is a code word for the unconscious. What did they have to do to get out of the desert? They had to heal the conflict within. What did they say? The old generation had to die off. That was the key to getting into the Promised Land. And the Promised Land isn't a place with palm trees and milk and honey. The Promised Land is conscious co-creation. Most people spend the first 40 or so years of their lives in the desert. Unconscious conflict, not knowing that they're playing out the generational patterns. And so there's that self, that non-being self, and then there's being, and there's the conflict. That's the Battle of Armageddon. The battleground is the body. So if you want to be restored to your power, make peace between the true self that you are, discover, and bring into expression the true state of being, the true active presence of love, and resolve everything that the other master wants you to believe in and obey. Because if you're divided, you can't stand. So when these two come into serenity, into harmony, then the barriers to the creative design of us as human beings are broken down. And now the true creative power that you have will be restored. You know, in the Course in Miracles, they talk about when you are healed, you are never healed alone. When minds join in serenity, connected to the mind of love, then unlimited power becomes available. However, if we retain an unconscious mind, and my offering is that the unconscious mind is a total aberration. We are not designed to have an unconscious mind. We are designed to be able to be aware of every piece of information that is in us at any time. But if you step into that unlimited power place, well, actually, you're always in that unlimited power place. It's just, what does it serve? Does that unlimited power serve your hostility and fear-based creations, your conflict creations? Notice how good you are at it. Notice that even if you take the geographic cure and go to the other side of the country, the person who picks you up at the airport will finish the sentence that the person who dropped you off started. How? Why? Because you have that unlimited power. But when you follow this particular saying, if two make serenity, come into serenity with one another in this temple, in this one house, they will say to the mountain, be moved, and it shall move. In other words, their power, their creative power is going to be restored. Still an unconscious mind where old beliefs lie, then your new creative efforts will be sabotaged by that unconscious dynamic. You'll say, oh, I want the most loving, wonderful relationship. But if you're in your unconscious, there's a 10-generation-old belief that relationships are hell and suffering and pain and conflict and death. Then your request for a wondrous relationship, resonating what's in the divided part of your own mind. Remember, Yeshua said, take care of the heart, which would be the unconscious of the desert. Take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. That old 10-generation-old belief about relationships, when someone says, I want wondrous relationship, and the sabotage comes from the belief that relationships are hell. And so what he's talking about here is when you eradicate the conflict, when you choose which master you're going to serve, is the master going to choose based in love, or is the master going to choose based in hostility, fear, depression, disease, suffering, death? Then that's where your power will flow. And that means there's a work to be done, which takes us into statement 48. Yeshua says, blessed are the solitary and the elect. Well, first of all, let's look at that word blessed. I do not have this based in Aramaic translation, so I do not know if we looked at the Aramaic rendition of the Gospel Thomas, if this word blessed are they is tuvehun, as in the Beatitudes. But if you go back and you look at each of the Beatitudes where the Greeks tell us errantly in their misinterpretations, tell us that blessed, you'll be blessed, blessed are they. There's some sort of external force that's going to bless you if you do whatever their translation is. And the Greek translations of the Beatitudes is an atrocity. You know, you listen to Yeshua and he says, you know, I come to connect you with the Spirit of truth. Deny me, but don't deny that one. And the first of the Beatitudes, according to the Greek, says, blessed are they who are poor in spirit. Yeshua says, I come to connect you with it, and they want you to pretend you're poor. Poor, misinterpreted by the Greeks to keep us totally off track, in Aramaic is home. Blessed are those whose home is in the eternal forces from the Creator. And the word blessed are they, more properly translated from Aramaic, says, you know, and you look over and over and over the Beatitudes, blessed are they, blessed are they, blessed are they, according to the Greeks. In Aramaic, what it says over and over and over again is a latent neural structure implanted by God to guide you to happiness and well-being will become your conscious possession, you who, and then the Beatitudes are a set of instructions for how to activate that neural structure. So when your home is in the eternal forces from the Creator rather than your eyes, earlier when we talk about breaking the eyes, recognizing that what your eyes show you does not tell you anything about the outside world. Stimulated by the outside world, it tells you what's going on inside. And so, as I say, I do not have it based in translation, but, pardon me, if the word in tuvehun is tuvehun here, in this statement 49 from the Gospel of Thomas, then it says a latent neural structure implanted by the Creator to guide you to happiness and well-being will be your possession, you who spend time in solitude and are of the elect. For you shall find the kingdom. And in Aramaic, the word kingdom of God or kingdom of heaven, as it's been translated by the Greeks, again, total misinterpretation, total mislead. The words the kingdom of heaven speak of the community of love. So he's saying there's this neural structure in you that's designed to be activated. And when it is, then you will connect to, you will live in the community of love. Literally, your physiology will experience the presence of love. And so the condition for that reward to happen is solitary and elect. Let's think for a moment about this idea of elect. We have a so-called religious culture that often points out the elect. Well, you know, they're the special people. You probably don't belong to the club. Whenever I talk about this topic, I remember the church we went to was a large church we would not normally go to, but someone had personally invited us, so we went in Fort Lauderdale. You'd recognize the name of it if I told you what it was, a big TV thing. And I was appalled as I sat there. You know, there are about probably 5,000 people in the room. And there are several kids that are going to be inducted into the church. And here, all these kids are up there in front of all these thousands of people witnessing for them, joining in the mind energy that these kids are forced to engage in. And what is the first thing the kids have to do to become members of the church? They have to declare that they are sinners. They have to leave their true identity at the door and buy into a whole load of garbage in order to become one of the elect. clarify what the elect means. The elect are those that the Creator created. Period. The fact that the breath of life was put in you, the Creator's breath, means you are already chosen and are part of the elect. And those who pretend they're in charge of a special category and you must be enslaved by them in order to be part of the elect, it's all a con. It's all a con of the unhealed mind. So this latent neurostructure, when it is activated, becomes part of the guidance system that supports you in healing every form of hostility or fear that is carried around from the generational patterns. And then the simple active presence of love becomes the most natural expression of your eternal life. You remember they said, do not be molded by the world or you will end up moldy. Okay, that's not exactly the way it was said, but in essence, that's the message. If you buy into the mind, and remember the opening words in the book of John, do not say in the beginning was the Word and the Word became flesh. In Aramaic, they say in the beginning was the mind energy and the mind energy became flesh. You engage in any form of mind energy, and that mind energy will solidify in your form, literally will show up as a molecule called a neuropeptide. That neuropeptide will circulate around in your structure until it finds a cell with a receptor site that matches, and it will land on the cell, and when it lands on the cell, that neuropeptide energetically will insert itself in the cell, and if we were inside of the cell watching that insertion process, what we would watch coming into the cell would be what we call chemistry. Mind energy becomes flesh. If you buy in, if you are molded by the world, if you buy into the hostility, fear-based world, the world that tells you you are a sinner, you better proclaim that first, and, fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Words said in the name of a man who at least 15 different times throughout his teaching said, fear not, 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 fear not. In a book that over 300 times says, fear not. Somebody tells you that the beginning of wisdom is fear of the presence of love in your life? Like, how bizarre does that become? But it's interesting. You can convince the human mind to believe anything, and once it's been convinced to believe it, it's called hypnosis, then the mind will produce evidence to prove that that belief is true. Doesn't mean it's true. But remember that the human mind is an evidential device. Remember that Harvard research that tells us in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, the maximum amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. When you're looking at 9 bits of data out of 10,000 pieces of information firing, you're looking at evidence, and the only evidence you will ever get to see through the mind of Adam in you, the Adamos mind, the red clay mind, the body-mind unit, the only evidence you'll ever see is evidence of your own BS. That is belief system. Somebody convinced you to buy into you're a sinner, then you will see all kinds of evidence that proves it's true. And it's not true. It's a lie. Remembering that the word sin in Aramaic is an archery term. When you fire at the bullseye and you miss the bullseye, the scorekeeper yelled sin. You're off the mark. That's all it means. So you are not one of those. Yes, you and I and everybody have engaged in the energies that are off the mark for our highest and best physiology. Yes, we all have. Does that make us sinners? No, that is a totally false, lying identity formulated by those who have not done their work, who are feeling weak and powerless and need to have control over others. Do not be molded by the world. You are physiologically designed to experience flowing from your cellular structure literally the active presence of love and joy. You'll know you're progressing in your forgiveness work if you recognize a time when physiologically maybe it was hard to touch into that presence of joy and love. And now, even in the middle of your muddle, an issue's up that you haven't yet resolved, and the energy of pain or trauma is moving, and you can close your eyes and you can take a breath and you can remember your connection to active present love. A lack of love, physiologically experienced, means that there is a dis-ease energy moving in your tissue structure. The core tool that Yeshua taught, because he was talking to a world that was totally and completely submersed in that hostility and fear-based game, as most are today, was the tool of forgiveness. He handed people a tool that said, here's how you go inside and you make peace with yourself. Here's how you undo being a house divided against yourself. Here's how the two in one body, one home, become as one. And when you apply the tool of forgiveness, you apply the tool of removal of conflicting energy from your physiology, where your cell is not humming along, providing you with the experience of literally the presence of love and joy in your cells. It's because that cell has the quote-unquote chemistry, which is nothing but the mind energy of some form of hostility or fear. And so the cell stops singing the song it's designed to sing. Fortunately, well, before we do the fortunately part, the way the energy system works is every energy you engage in is stored holographically in every cell. And if you've overlaid generation upon generation, if you come from generations and didn't know any better than to play the hostility and fear-based game, to live in those energies that are off the mark, literally to live in sin, no religious context of that, just living in energies that didn't belong, then when you apply forgiveness, you literally drop your awareness from these pictures created by your mind out of carbon-based memory, these pictures that are painted on the inside of your eyeballs that look like they're about somebody else out there. You recognize that you're feeling it, you collapse those pictures through forgiveness, and you literally drop into the part of your mind which is in your body that is in need of healing. And you access those overlaid energies, and the fortunate part is whatever energies are overlaid can be removed. When you access and forgive those, then the cell naturally goes back to singing the song it's designed to sing. And that is that physiologically, you'll experience the presence of love. You'll experience the physiological joy in your cellular structure. I'd offer that your birthright. And so let's go back once again. Let's just read what this statement says. Blessed are the solitary and the elect. You shall find the community of love. For you came forth thence, and you shall go there again. So what's he saying? You're the elect by the fact that you have breath in you. You literally have the breath of God in you. Literally. In the Aramaic, when you go back into the original creation story, it doesn't say the Creator sent out its spirit. It says the Creator sent out its breath. You are the elect. Now, if you have something different in mind, what do you have to do? You have to clean out your mind. And that's the tool of forgiveness. So what do you do to do that? Well, you remember Yeshua said you must go into the closet and close the door. Your physiology is literally designed to be a trap for God. What does that mean? What do you do? What are you talking about trapping God? Well, it's interesting in the Aramaic language. You'll note that there must have been a great deal of confusion 2,000 years ago among the disciples when they asked Yeshua to teach them to pray. You know, if they'd have known how to pray, they wouldn't have asked Yeshua, teach me to pray. And Yeshua did not say a prayer in response to that question. Yeshua gave them instructions on how to pray. Obviously, a great deal of confusion because the man who said, don't repeat and repeat like the pagans, they've taken this set of instructions and turned it into a set of babbling words that they say once a week or 2 times a week or 20 times a week. He said, don't repeat and repeat like the pagans. It's not what it's about. So when they asked the question, teach us to pray, he did not say a prayer. He gave them a set of instructions on how to pray. And what does the word pray mean? It means to set a trap for God. Think of it, bypass all the belief systems of the world and think of it in terms of we live in an energy system. You'll note that, although this is changing now with technology and cable and all, but basically you had an antenna on the roof that was a trap for channel 2, and if the trap were oriented and aligned properly, then you got a beautiful picture and great sound, and you could listen clearly to channel 2. If somebody went up on the roof and bent the arms and turned the antenna around, or disconnected the antenna, you didn't get channel 2. The trap for channel 2 was non-functional, even though you had a perfectly operating TV set. You can have perfectly operating physiology, but if you are not oriented and aligned properly, capture the energy that the Creator gave you and designed you for. Literally realigning the antenna structure and moving the trauma-based energies out of physiology are what the new quantum still point intensives that I'm doing are about. It's about getting back into that aligned state physiologically. So your physiology is designed to be a trap for God. You literally are designed to physically feel the presence of love. You're designed for physiological joy in your form, in your so-called body. If you're not feeling that, it's imperative that you go in there and do your work. That's what he's talking about with the solitude here. You are the only one that can go in there and clean it up. When Yeshua told them that, half of the disciples left saying, too hard a saying, who can hear such a thing? I have to face every form of hostility, fear, and derogatory energy in me and deal with it and remove it. Too hard a saying, I'm out of here. I'm going back to my old life. So each must take time in solitude. Rather than jumping up and going from task to task to task to task to task, avoiding what's chasing you from within, you've got to take time, get quiet, breathe, go inside and face what's chasing you within. And it may be horrific when you first start to look at it. People talk about a bad trip. When you go inside and close the door, you will not find anything that isn't in there. And if it's in there, and when you look at it, you're terrified, it's literally physiologically costing you. You better look at it. You better let that terror come forward and bring it to the presence of active love for dissolution. So doing this work is done in silence, in breath, and solitude. Remember, you can't serve two masters. And if you've been molded by the world, if you come from a history, a background of pain, of suffering, of hostility, of fear, of terror, of trauma, then you must spend time in the breath and in the silence, in the solitude, to claim the truth of who you are. And that's the core objective of this work. That's the very core of what this work, and under the title of Why Is This Happening to Me Again, is about. And of course, we've got lots of tools. If you go to your app store, type in the words Heartland, Heartland, Aramaic forgiveness, you'll be looking at the world's only forgiveness app. Download it and start to do the work on your phone. You can go to our website, whyagain.org. You can do the worksheet forgiveness process right there live on the app. You can download a variety of different worksheets on the forgiveness process, as well as worksheets from all of the different workshops that we do. It's all there, free at whyagain.org. You've got over 20,000 pages of information to go through. Yes, it is a process. But in the last analysis, you must personally take time in solitude. You must personally take the time to allow yourself to process through anything in physiology that blocks the awareness of the physiological presence of love and joy in your body.
We have
Your cellular
another question.
structure. Oh, go for it. Cool.
Okay. He says, I have a few more questions. Thank you so much for hosting the show and answering the questions. It's awesome. Are there integrative, and in parentheses, constructive resonances, or are there just negative ones? And if total forgiveness, one question at a time. Go ahead.
Yeah, The universe is based in a simple law energetically, and that's the law of resonance. So if I take a middle C tuning fork and I hit it on a desk, and I put it near a second middle C tuning fork that's standing still, going to be standing still for long. Once the atomic magnetic structure of the two tuning forks matches, if one has a higher energy state than the other, then it's going to transfer some of its energy to the other. That's resonance. So it doesn't matter whether it's an A tuning fork or a Z tuning. I don't know if there's such a thing as a Z tuning fork. It doesn't matter anywhere on the spectrum. It doesn't matter, a condition of hate in the mind, because literally what moves in the mind is energy, and everything that moves energetically creates an energy wave. So the person with hate in their mind literally sets up a resonating energy wave with hate. Any other mind within the area that is attuned to hatred will be drawn to that person. That's why life is so relentless in giving us opportunities to heal, because if I hold something that's unhealed, my offering is that life is about life, and it abhors death. If one is holding sin, an energy that's off the mark, and again, nothing to do with theology or religion here, it's just where you live. If you're holding something that's deteriorating, your liver, your lungs, your heart, your brain, then that energy literally is a wave that is going to draw somebody to you, and that somebody's going to do something that's going to resonate that in you. If you are a member of the one world universal religion of blame, then you'll say, look what you've done to me. You hurt me so much. Look at all this pain you've caused in me. If you're doing the work of Yeshua, you'll take a breath and go, man, what you just resonated in me. I had no idea it was there. Would you support me owning it and forgiving it so that I can be free of it? And thanks for showing it to me. By the way, as we're having that conversation, it looks to me like you might have some matching pain and trauma. And so we could, instead of conflicting, instead of me blaming you for the pain you resonated in me, and you blaming me for the pain I resonated in you, we could actually join in actually growing into adulthood, where we give up our membership of the One World Universal Religion of Blame, and we become partners in healing. Yes, you know exactly how to trigger my deepest trauma. So thank you. Great tune if you haven't heard it yet. Jump on YouTube and do a search for Alanis Morissette, Madness. The basic melody line or lyric line in Madness is, I should thank you for your most valuable triggers. because the madness in me is resonated by the madness in you. And what I just discovered is the madness goes on when you're not in the room. Thank you for this opportunity. It's a basic message of that song. It's like the whole bundle of work right there in one piece of music, although it doesn't give the how-to of the forgiveness, except the first step of you take responsibility. And so across the board, and it doesn't matter if it's the lowest of the low energy or the highest of the high, a particular energetic condition in one mind will tend to resonate or activate that condition in every other mind with which it comes in contact. And because we don't know of anything in the so-called physical world that can stop the high energy waves that leave a mind when we think a thought, the person who holds to any form of hostility or fear, literally through resonance, is a supporter of hostility or fear in every mind on the planet. Every mind that holds hostility or fear is attuned to that frequency. And because these frequencies are of such a refined nature, there is no matter that we know of that is tightly enough atomically structured to interfere with those high energy waves moving throughout the globe. You know, if I use an example, here I am, I'm sitting in a room, the door is closed, and I've got a light on. Jeannie's on the other side of the wall. She can't see the light in my room. Why not? Well, gee, there are these photons leaving this light. They're hitting the wall. Why doesn't she get them on the other side? Because the atomic magnetic structure of the wall, the drywall, the paint and such, is dense enough that it literally energetically absorbs those photons, and they do not show up on the other side. I'd have to go to a higher frequency that will penetrate. That is, that the actual wave shape is small enough to squeeze through, to move past the density of the atomic magnetic structure of the wall itself. So if I say, for instance, started to broadcast a radio show from in this room, if I had a small broadcast station and Jeannie was on the other side of the wall, there's not enough density in the material of this wall to absorb all of the energy that I'm broadcasting, so she'd receive the broadcast signal on the other side of the wall. But if I built this room into what they call a Faraday cage, you know, you see these wallets that are now available. They say they're a Faraday cage or they're a blocking structure. They're made of a material dense enough so that your credit card, which is always emitting a signal, cannot be read because the material is dense enough to absorb that energy of that signal. If it's in your pocket, somebody with the right kind of reader can read your credit cards. But in a Faraday cage, it doesn't happen. So if I made this room into a Faraday cage, it's a dense enough atomic magnetic structure that the radio signal, while it heads in the direction of Jeannie on the other side of the wall, is absorbed by the wall. None of it gets through the other side. She's not going to receive the signal. However, if I raise the frequency of what I'm broadcasting to an X-ray, the Faraday cage isn't enough to block the X-ray. It goes right through the wall. It's going to take 1/8 of an inch of lead for the atomic magnetic structure of the lead to be dense enough to absorb the signal of the X-ray. And I got 1/8 of an inch of lead. If I raise the frequency again to a gamma ray through the lead, because it, once again, isn't a dense enough atomic magnetic structure to absorb that energy. I think the gamma ray takes something like 18 inches of lead to have the density to absorb that energy so that it doesn't radiate out. We don't know of anything in the physical, so-called physical world that is dense enough to stop the high energy wave that leaves the mind when we think a thought. So think a thought, and you are a supporter of that throughout the world. Think a thought, and you sent out a signal that if there's anybody in the neighborhood is going to tend to be drawn to you. And they're going to be drawn to you by resonance with that particular thought. If that person is really conscious, they will be aware of the fact that they're responding to a signal you're sending out, and instead of, puking all over you, if the signal is one of negativity and, say, an old belief system of I deserve to be attacked, come into the space and recognize this inclination to attack. If they're conscious enough, it's not appropriate for them, that it's a disintegrative energy, it's sin, and they're not going to engage in it for their own sake, nor for your sake. So the world is in continuous communication all the time, and we're here to serve each other. We either serve each other out of our hostility and fear-based minds by creating chaos in the world, or we serve each other from a mind of active present love, inviting all other minds to move up to the true level of human existence, which is, if you've ever held a newborn child, you know exactly what it is. It is this pure presence of sweetness, beauty, and love. That's where we all started. That's where we all still truly exist. Actually, the next statement of Yeshua addresses that one in this book of Thomas. Okay, Miss Jeannie, that's my first thought.
Okay, his next question is, if total forgiveness is complete, okay, first of all, I'd like to meet that person.
Yeah, I'm willing to be there.
Where you have no negative resonance, then would you still feel negative emotions? And how are forgiveness and unattachment related?
Okay, so no, you would not feel. Let's determine what feelings are. Here's my offering. If you go with that opening words in the book of John, in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. You engage in a piece of mind energy, and remember, literally, what the cell biologists are telling us is that mind energy becomes a neuropeptide. That neuropeptide circulates around in your structure until it finds a cell with a receptor site that matches. My offering is that neuropeptide then lands on the receptor site, and the cell itself, the design the creators put into it is, it warns you of the quality of what you're engaging in. So negative emotion, I bring in, there's a frequency of hate, and I bring it in, and it lands on the cell, and my cellular structure goes, hate, no, stop. Unless I'm totally inconstant, and then I go, hey, let's do some more, let's get it on. So if I've engaged in total forgiveness, and as Jeannie says, with a bit of a laugh, it's a lifetime of work. When you realize that we're dealing with generations and generations and generations. When they said the sins of the fathers will be passed, yea, into 3 and 4 generations of those who hate me, that was not the Creator condemning or punishing anybody for anything. That was the Creator saying, look, guys, here's how it works. You're an energetic being. You get to engage in whatever you choose to engage in. Engage in hate, and you get the results of that energy of hate, that energy that's off the mark. And it will, seeing as how it is an incoherent energy with your organized design for love, it will begin the deterioration of your structure. It will ultimately destroy you. Choose to apply forgiveness, and generations and generations and generations and generations who've not known any better now become the field for your work. You go inside where those energetic patterns are stored. Did anybody tell you when you came into the world at any time in your development, did anybody tell you that literally in your physiology, every thought, every feeling, every reality, every energy that every person in your bloodline for at least 4 generations back was stored in you? They were telling us about physiology when they said the sins of the father passed, yea, into 3 and 4 generations. You go back 4 generations, that's 31. When you count yourself, that's 31 lives. What did your parents go through that they never resolved? What did your grandparents on both sides go through that they never resolved? And their grandparents and their grandparents. That's all in your genes. Mine is all in my genes. So there's a work to be done. I will feel emotions based on those energies moving in me as long as they're in me. And when you start to breathe and you start to go inside and you start to forgive and you do that work, you will never confront anything that isn't already there. People start touching into things and they lock their breath down. They hold it like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. Don't make me look at this. Don't make me feel this. I remember a buddy of mine way back from my early life, my early business world. And I became involved in this work, and I created the still point breathing process. And it had been a couple of years since I'd seen him. And I told him about some of the breath work I was doing. And he said, yeah, I'd like to try that. I said, okay, lay down, let's breathe. We get about 20 minutes into the still point breathing session. And this guy's Joe businessman. He's pretty successful, drives a nice vet, the fanciest of clothes. And we're about 20 minutes into the session, and he literally, and this guy at this point is in his mid-40s, he literally starts to cry. And he says to me, Michael, don't make me do this. Now, all I'm doing is supporting him breathing. That's all. But what he accesses, what he's held his breath in the presence of previously, my offering is now becomes available to him. And he thinks it's something that, one, somehow I'm making him do, and two, that, if he stops, he doesn't have to deal with it. Well, there's such thing as not dealing with what's in you. And I'll just say from my own personal perspective, my own personal work, I recognize really clearly, though I've been doing this work for half a century plus and developed this whole body of work, and my most important and deepest work has been done in just the last 2 or 3 years. So you won't experience if it's not in you, and if it's in you and you do your work, you will experience it, and you'll free not only yourself, but your bloodline from it. And you'll open the space, literally. You'll open the energy window for everybody in the world that's plagued by that same issue to also move one step closer to healing. It's a powerful process. And we are down to the last few seconds. Actually, we're past the last few seconds, and the show's about to cut us off, so I'm just going to say thank you for joining us. Create the best year yet of your eternal life. Enjoyed the questions. If I haven't completed answers,